there's a big kind of conflict, crash and burn coming for my character, and it'll cause strife in our relationship. But it has more to do with, I mean, this whole season's about Ben trying to figure out what kind of cop he wants to be. Now that he's a cop for real, he's no longer on probation. He has the opportunity to become any kind of cop he wants to be, and he can look to Sammy for a positive, you know, good cop, quote unquote, or he can go become Dewey, you know, Ferguson, you know,
right.
Or even John Cooper, who, although a good cop, is clearly tormented by a lot of things and not particularly, you know, the most pleasant guy to be around. So he's got to figure out, you know, what kind of cop he wants to be, and I think it's that journey for, you know, creating his own identity that really drives him throughout the season, and I think it's actually relatable to anyone in any business, you know.
Right. Well, it's interesting that you say that, because it seems like Cooper is loosening up a little bit this season.
Right.
So what's the interaction like between Ben and Cooper now? Do they have a lot going forward?
No, they don't. I mean, we're playing the reality of the situation, which is that once you're done with that training period, most probationary officers and training officers are, I mean, they could be friendly, but they're not like their best buddies.
Right.
And the force is big, and I've transferred to a different division, and, you know, life goes on. It doesn't mean that relationship won't always be an important part of both of their sort of lives, considering how much happened in those 3 years, or whatever we played it as, 2 years. But life goes on, you know, and they'll meet up down the road.
Right.
And,
do you see Ben and Sammy staying partners for a long time, or do you think next season?
I think it's certainly possible. You know, because we're through with that probationary period plot line, there's no hard and fast rules as to when it needs. There's no box we have to check to finish off, you know, that thing. So it certainly could happen next year. I certainly think that the way it goes towards the end could be a cool place for them to jump off next year. And there's a lot of stuff that we haven't done that we could do with what they call the P2 dogs, these young P2 guys who are sent into the gang areas and the harder areas, and because they're full of, you know, piss and vinegar, and they want to get out there and bust heads, and we could do much more of that next year if we want to.
Right.
But it's just going to depend on what the producers and writers want to do, and Sean and I will definitely put in our 2 cents, but, you know, we don't necessarily get to make that call.
Right. Well, it definitely seems like coming up there's a lot of decisions that Ben has to make personally as well.
Yeah.
Aside from this potential move, are we getting a look at what the rest of his personal life at all? Family, girls?
We're not getting so much to look at the family. You know, I think that the family story we told earlier in the previous seasons was more to set up, kind of to understand what makes him tick.
Right.
And quite frankly, I requested that we move away from the, like, Beverly Hills, Brentwood stuff, because I just don't think that's, once he's in this world of being a cop, he's in this world.
Right.
You know, and he could still be from somewhere else, but he's here. And the action is here. But in terms of his personal life with women, yeah, I mean, you'll see some of that. And he's trying, every cop has to find a way of releasing stress. And he's, you know, finding his way. It's not necessarily the most healthy way. It is what it is. He's a 20-year-old, 20.
Well, is that what you're saying? Is he's releasing stress through dating different women, or?
Well, no, he's experiencing all kinds of craziness on the job, and so he's drinking too much, and he's partying too much, and he's with too many women.
Sure.
And that's, you know, something a lot of guys in their 20s do.
Right, regardless of the job.
Exactly, and it just happens to be a very stressful job.
Right.
But the stuff we did with his family in the past will set up what I think motivates him towards the end of the season with sort of a plot line involving trying to save. He has a real soft spot in his heart for women. He's an interesting guy because he's kind of a player, sort of, and then, you know, almost psychotically protective of women who he feels are in danger, who have been hurt and abused because his mom was.
Right.
And so that'll come to a head in the last third of the season, and we'll see that. And
how much, we heard today that you might be in blood makeup, that something is going down, that you get a little injured. So how much of these physical altercations are we really seeing Ben get involved in this year? I mean, last year on that roof, I think, was the craziest thing I've ever seen on television.
Let's go. Yeah,
so are you doing a lot more of that?
Yeah, we keep the action up. This is a huge action sequence, which will have sort of physical implications for both Sammy and Ben, and then there's a huge scene in the last episode of the season, a huge scene in the last episode of the season that involves a chase.
Do you feel like it comes easier to you now that you've been in the role for so long?
No, I get older, so I mean it's easier, and I know what to expect more. But man, my body is
Please.
It's trying, it's pushing.
Well, we're standing out here on the streets of Los Angeles, and you're dressed like a cop. Do you find that people, when they recognize you now, they recognize you as an authority versus when they recognized you like from the OC? Is it a much different vibe between your fans and you?
I think there's a little bit more. But I think there's still a fair amount of sort of that pop cultural thing that came along with the OC. But yeah, no, I think there is. I think there is a little bit of a shift. Mm-hmm. I think guys maybe look at me a little bit better.
Okay.
With a little more respect. Perhaps maybe that's just in my mind. Maybe that's wishful thinking. But maybe they do.
Or maybe they just think you're an actual cop and they don't want to piss you off.
Which is great. I will take that.